Hello. Good morning, everybody. I hope all of you are fine. Today's our topic for lecture is reflexes. Next. It's a reflex activity or the reflex action. It's an involuntary activity and it's the simplest motor response to a sensory input. Reflex can be defined as the simplest motor response to a sensory input. And for this reflex activity, the pathway which is required and the pathway for reflex activity is known as reflex arc. From here you can see the components of the reflex arc. First is the receptor, and then this is the afferent nerve. This is the central processing area. Then this is the efferent limb, and then this is the effector. So the components of the reflex are receptor, afferent limb, central processing area, efferent limb, and the effector. From here, this receptor, when the stimulus is applied in the receptor, the graded potential is generated. This graded potential, it is converted into action potential, and action potential propagates into the afferent limb. In the spinal cord area, here this afferent limb, afferent limb, it may either generate EPSP or IPSP, depending upon its connection to the efferent limb. If it is direct connecting, then it is usually the EPSP is generated, that is the excitatory postsynaptic potential. And if it is connected through an interneuron, so majority of the time this interneuron, it is inhibitory, and IPSP is generated, that is the inhibitory postsynaptic potential is generated. And then this EPSP and IPSP, if they propagate into the efferent limb they are converted into action potential, and then they propagate in the efferent limb, and in the neuromuscular junction, first the miniature end plate potential is generated, and then end plate potential, it is converted into action potential, and then this muscle is stimulated. This way, the whole reflex arc is completed. Next. Now, the receptors for the reflex activity, there are 5 types of receptors are present in the muscles, tendons, and the joints. First one is the free nerve endings, which are sensitive to pain, temperature, etc. stimuli. Then Pacinian corpuscles, which are sensitive to vibrations and pressure. Then joint receptors are present joint receptors are there, and then Golgi tendon organs, which detect the force, which are sensitive to the force or tension. Then the muscle spindle, they are sensitive to the stretch. The muscle spindles are the stretch receptors. They are sensitive to the length of the muscle fiber and the speed and the total stretch of the muscle spindle. Next. Now, let us first see the structure of muscle spindle and the Golgi tendon organ. The muscle spindle, it is also known as the intrafusal fibers. The outside, it is the extrafusal fiber, it is the muscle fiber, and this area, it is the intrafusal fiber or the muscle spindle. Each muscle spindle, it consists of 2 nuclear bag fibers and around 8 to 9 nuclear chain fibers. They all together, they are known as intrafusal fibers. They constitute the muscle spindle. The nerve supply, the primary nerve supply from both nuclear bag as well as the nuclear chain fiber, it is the type 1A fibers, which is the primary nerve supply. This primary nerve supply is supplying to both nuclear bag as well as the nuclear chain fibers. Both the nuclear bag fibers and all the nuclear chain fibers. Whereas the secondary sensory endings, they are the type 2 fibers. These type 2 fibers, they supply to the nuclear chain fibers. The ends of these nuclear chain and the nuclear bag fibers, they have got the efferent motor fiber. They are known as gamma efferents or the gamma motor fibers, which are supplying in the ends of this intrafusal fiber or the muscle spindle. The extrafusal fibers, they are supplied by alpha fibers, alpha type of motor fibers, alpha type of fibers. Now, this is the Golgi tendon organ. This Golgi tendon organ, these are the spread nerve endings, and they are present in the tendon area of the muscle, and they are encapsulated. They are encapsulated, and the fiber which is supplying to this, the sensory nerve supply to this is 1B fiber. 1B fiber, that is the sensory nerve ending which are supplying to the Golgi tendon fiber. Next. Now, these muscle spindles, they are sensitive to the rate of, they have got two types of responses. One is static response and another is dynamic response. The static response is all throughout the stretch of the this muscle spindle, they keep on firing. The action potentials, they are generated during the stretch. And when there is in this area, whenever there is the stretch is there, the nuclear chain fibers, they fire continuously, and the dynamic response is generated via the nuclear bag fibers. The nuclear bag dynamic, when this dynamic response is there, the dynamic response is whenever there is a, during the change, the rate during the change of the stretch, whenever the muscle spindle, it is stretching. At that juncture, the nuclear bag fibers, they fire, and that is known as the dynamic response of the muscle spindle. And when the stretch is there, when the stretch is completed, the nuclear chain fibers, they also start firing, and that is known as the static response. Static response, when the muscle spindle has stretched, and dynamic response, when the muscle spindle is stretching. And this is, here you can see that the muscle spindle, this is the action potential which is generated, and it is during the stretch of the muscle with the extrafusal fiber stretching, the intrafusal fibers, they also stretch, and the action potential is generated, and it is propagate through the primary nerve ending, that is 1A fiber. 1A fiber, it is transmitted through, it propagates in the primary sensory nerve fiber, that is 1A. And when the muscle is contracted, once the muscle, it is the extrafusal fibers, it gets contracted, the action potential frequency, generation of action potential frequency in the intrafusal fiber, it decreases. So when the muscle is stretching, the frequency of firing of intrafusal fiber, it is increased. Here you can see, and here you can see the action potential frequency, it declines when the muscle is contracting. Now, the intrafusal, next slide. अच्छा नहीं, previous one नहीं डाला, हाँ? Previous, पहले वाली. The intrafusal, along with this, whenever there is, let us talk about something about the gamma efferents. The gamma efferents, their discharge also affect the stretching. Whenever there is gamma efferent discharge is increased, that causes the contraction of this muscle spindle, and the discharge it helps in the action potential propagation is decreased, and it helps in attaining the making the contraction a smooth one. If this gamma efferent as well as this sensory nerve supply, they make the contraction a smoother one. If this supply is not there, this gamma efferent is not working, it is not there, then the oscillations, this stretch will cause the oscillations in the contraction. These oscillations are prevented in the contraction of the extrafusal fibers when there is the gamma efferent discharge along with this gamma efferent discharge is there. Because of this gamma efferent discharge, this oscillations in the muscle contractions, they are inhibited, and the contraction, it becomes smoother ones. There is one term that is alpha gamma linkage and the alpha gamma co-activation. Whenever there is the alpha motor neurons, they are activated. Whenever they are activated, alpha motor neurons, whenever the descending tracts, they are about 31% of the output of the descending tracts, it goes to the gamma efferents, and the rest of this, it goes to the alpha motor neurons. When this, and that causes the co-activation of the alpha as well as the gamma motor neurons. Now, why this is co-activation is required? Because of this co-activation of alpha and gamma motor neurons, the activation, this contraction is, the oscillations in the contractions, they are prevented, and it becomes the smooth one. Because of this gamma co-activation, the descending tracts, as I had told you, the descending tracts, they are the 31% of the descending tracts output, it goes to the gamma neurons, and the rest of it goes to the alpha motor neuron. So the descending tracts, they are controlling both alpha motor neurons as well as the gamma motor neurons. And therefore, the other factors which affect the gamma motor discharge, it is the anxiety. During anxiety, the gamma motor neuron discharge is increased. And another is, during anxiety, this gamma motor neuron is increased. And another is, that is by reinforcement. Reinforcement, that is also known as Jandrasic maneuver. That is, if we clench our teeth or we pull our fingers like this, that is known as reinforcement. And this reinforcement also increases the gamma motor neuron discharge. And during anxiety also, this gamma motor neuron discharge is increased. The Jandrasic maneuver is applied frequently while eliciting the different monosynaptic jerks, and whenever the tendon reflexes, for the eliciting of the tendon reflexes, this Jandrasic maneuver is applied sometimes. We ask the subject to clench the teeth or pull the fingers, and with that, if we are unable to elicit the tendon reflex, and this phenomena, it helps in increasing the gamma discharge. With the increase in gamma discharge, this stretching of the muscle spindle will occur, and with increase in stretching of the muscle spindle, the extrafusal fibers, they contract. This way, this help in Gamma motor discharge helps in the contraction of the muscle and elicitation of the tendon reflexes whenever the Jędrysik maneuver is applied. Now, this Golgi tendon organs, the Golgi tendon organ, it is stimulated whenever there is increased tension in the muscle. This Golgi tendon organ, isse piche wala, previous slide. This Golgi tendon organ, it is stimulated whenever there is increased tension in the, if a strong stimulus applied to the muscle, it contracts forcefully. So the tension in the muscle will increase and that will stimulate the Golgi tendon organ. Once this Golgi tendon organ is stimulated, this via this sensory fiber, that is 1B fiber, this sensation, impulse will travel to this Golgi tendon organ. From this, the impulse via afferent, it will travel to the central region, that is the spinal cord segment. Here it synapses with the alpha motor neuron. This afferent fiber synapses with the alpha motor neuron via interneuron. Always it synapses with the alpha motor neuron via interneuron, and this interneuron, it is inhibitory in nature and it inhibits the firing of alpha motor neuron, and this way it decreases immediately once the tension, if the tension is more and contraction is very forceful, this Golgi tendon organ will fire, and then the alpha motor neurons, they are inhibited via interneuron, and because of the inhibition of this alpha motor neuron, the muscle spontaneously it relaxes. And this is you must have observed in cases of, if you are doing exercises, vigorous exercises, then you are asked to perform, after completion of your workout, you are always asked to do some stretching exercises. How this stretching exercises, they revives our muscles. How they revive our muscle? With this stretching, what we do, we are stretching, we are stimulating this gamma discharge, and with that, with this stretching, powerful stretching, this Golgi tendon organ is stimulated. And Golgi tendon, because of the stimulation, it causes the decreased firing of alpha motor neuron and causes the relaxation of the muscles. And that is why it is always asked to do stretching exercises after workout. After strong workout, you are always asked to do these stretching exercises. And this stretching, it increases the tension when you stretch the muscle, it increases the tension in the muscle, and Golgi tendon organ is stimulated, and by its pathway, the reflex arc, it immediately causes the relaxation of the muscle. Now, next. Now, the classification of reflexes. We can classify reflexes depending upon the various conditions, and depending upon the pathways they are passing through the segment, which segment of the spinal cord, they are classified as segmental reflexes, intersegmental, and suprasegmental. The segmental reflexes means the afferent is going to one segment and then efferent is coming out of that segment, and in that case the example is tendon reflexes. The tendon reflexes, they are the example of segmental reflex. Now the next is the intersegmental. In case of intersegmental, the afferent, from the afferent, the branches, they go to the adjacent segments of the spinal tract, not only to the one segment, but some of the upper segments and to the lower segment also. The afferents, they combine, they synapse with the motor neurons of the upper and the lower segments, and the example is superficial reflexes. And next is the suprasegmental. In case this suprasegmental, it's a polysynaptic reflex activity. In the other upper segments of the above these spinal segments, the reflexes, they are the afferent output, it reaches to the above the spinal cord segments. Next. Then the clinical classification of the reflexes, that is based on the site of elicitation. One is superficial. For example, it's a plantar reflex. Then deep reflexes, they are the tendon jerks. And then the visceral reflexes, that is papillary reflex. And some are the pathological. So the clinically we can classify reflexes as superficial, deep, visceral and pathological. Next. And depending upon the number of synapses involved, the reflexes, they can be classified as monosynaptic. Monosynaptic, it's a stretch reflex, that is one synapse is there, that is afferent limb, efferent limb, effector. This is the receptor, afferent limb, efferent limb and the effector. That constitutes the monosynaptic, that is stretch reflex. Whenever any stretch reflex, that is the tendon reflexes, they are monosynaptic. Whenever we elicit any jerk, it's a monosynaptic reflex. Then the Golgi tendon organ, it is the bisynaptic, that is there are two synapses are involved in that. That example is inverse stretch reflex. This inverse stretch reflex, it is performed by that is the Golgi tendon organ reflex is also known as inverse stretch reflex. Why it is known as inverse stretch reflex? Because by exaggerated stretching of the muscle, what we are causing, we are increasing the tension and the Golgi tendon organ is stimulated, and then it is relaxing the muscle, and that is why it is known as inverse stretch reflex, or it is also known as auto-inhibition. It is the auto-inhibition reflex. That is, whenever there is excessive stretching of the muscle, ultimately, immediately these Golgi tendon organs, they are stimulated, and via 1B fiber, they send the impulse to the central region, and then the muscle is relaxed. And as there is always, in this reflex arc, the one interneuron is always there. That is why it is bisynaptic. That is, first the afferent neuron, it is synapsing with the interneuron, and then interneuron is synapsing with the efferent neuron. So there are two synapses are there, and that is why it is an example of bisynaptic. Then the next is the polysynaptic. Polysynaptic means multiple synapses are there, and the withdrawal reflex. Withdrawal reflex, it is an example of polysynaptic reflex. This withdrawal reflex, it is made up of flexor and the crossed extensor response. Now, the stretch reflex, how it is conducted. From here you can see, whenever there is stimulation or that is the muscle is stretched, this muscle spindle is stretched, the afferent component, it will directly synapse with the efferent component. This is the efferent component of the muscle. That is the efferent impulse via alpha motor neuron. It causes the contraction of the extrafusal fiber. So this is one synapse, and another is one limb of this afferent. After stretching of the muscle stretch, the other component, other one limb, it via interneuron, it synapse with another efferent neuron, which is supplying to the opposite antagonistic. This is the agonist muscle. This is antagonist muscle. Agonist means which is directly under action. And antagonistic means if it is extensor, this will be a flexor muscle. Okay, we are striking this, the other antagonistic muscle is supplied. It also gets the supply, if with one stimulus, the agonist muscle is supplied as well as the antagonistic muscle is also supplied. This reflex, two reflex arcs are formed. One is to the agonist muscle and another to the antagonistic muscles. The agonist muscle, this will cause, it is direct to the efferent limb, and it will cause the contraction of the extrafusal fibers. Whereas to the antagonistic muscles, here it will be via interneuron. You can see this one interneuron is there, and this causes the inhibition of the antagonistic muscles. There will be a damping reaction to this, and this is known as reciprocal inhibition. Reciprocal inhibition of the antagonistic muscle. The agonistic muscles, it is stimulated, whereas the antagonistic muscle, it is inhibited. This is known as reciprocal inhibition. In case of, if we see in case of, this is the quadriceps muscle and this is the hamstring muscle. Whenever there is contraction of the quadriceps muscle, the hamstring muscles will relax, and vice versa happens. If this muscle, this flexor is contracting, the extensor will relax. So this is the stretch reflex. This is the stretch reflex. Here you can see, whenever in case of patellar, if this patellar ligament, patella is a strike with a hammer, in case of knee jerk, this quadriceps muscle, it will cause the extension of the knee joint. That is, the contraction of the quadriceps muscle is there, and relaxation of this flexor, hamstring muscle is there. This is inhibited, and this quadriceps muscle is contracted, whereas this hamstring muscle, it is inhibited, because this arc is completed. This is bisynaptic arc, and it is completed via inhibitory interneuron. Okay, so this is the pathway for stretch reflex. This is the whole pathway for stretch reflex. In this case, there are the salient features of this stretch reflex is, first is the contraction of the agonist and relaxation of the antagonist. That is, the relaxation of the antagonist is brought about by reciprocal inhibition. Okay? Next. Now, this is the pathway for inverse stretch reflex. The inverse stretch reflex, as I had told you, the Golgi tendon organ is responsible for this inverse stretch reflex. The Golgi tendon organ, whenever it is stimulated, this is the 1B fiber, this is the afferent. This blue colored fiber is 1B fiber, and this fiber, it is synapsing with the efferent via interneurons. There are two interneurons. The two interneurons, they are supplying to the extensor as well as the flexor muscle. They are supplying. This extensor muscle, it will be inhibited, whereas this flexor group of muscle, it will be excited. And this way, this is inverse, and this prevents this is known as inverse stretch reflex. That is, it causing the relaxation of the extensor group of muscles and stretching of the flexor group of muscles. And this pathway always is bisynaptic. Bisynaptic, two synapses are there, and it is this inverse stretch reflex, it is the flexor. In this case, the flexors, they are excited via interneuron, and whereas these flexors, the extensor group of muscles, they are inhibited via interneuron. Next. This is the pathway for withdrawal reflex. Withdrawal reflex, it's a polysynaptic activity. What do we mean by polysynaptic activity? That is the afferent neuron, it is supplying to the output from the afferent neuron, it goes to multiple interneurons. And these interneurons, they keep multiple interneurons, and after the impulse, it travels to multiple interneuron, and then only it terminates over the afferent neuron. इसके एक स्लाइड आगे करो, नहीं आगे ये पीछे कर दिया आपने, आगे और आगे एक स्लाइड. Here you can see this is the multiple neuron interneurons. There are multiple. This is the afferent limb and multiple interneurons, they are there. And these multiple, not only they are directly synapsing with the motor neuron, they are also forming. They are again the signals, they are going back also. And this is reverberating cycles, they are formed. Reverberating circuits, they are formed. आगे करो, वापस. अरे पीछे जाओ, हाँ पीछे, हाँ बस. These, here you can see, it is the withdrawal reflex, it's a polysynaptic reflex. In this case, multiple synapses are formed through interneurons. Here we can see, if suppose if something painful is lying on the ground and your foot, it goes upon it, what will happen? Immediately you will pull your foot. And this, with pulling of your foot, what you are doing, there is flexion of the limb, there is flexion of one limb, whereas the extension of the other limb. And this causes extension of the other limb, and it not only happens in your lower limb, it happens in your upper limb also simultaneously. Whenever there is extension of there will be a flexion in the limb affected, extension on the other lower limb, and then there is flexion on the opposite side. The multiple limbs, they are affected only with a single painful nociceptive stimulation. And because, why this happens? In case of withdrawal reflex, this multi-synapses, they are multiple synapses, they are activated. Immediately the afferent output, not only it goes to it inhibits the extensors, flexors, they are activated of the same foot, whereas these extensors, they help in balancing the other. For the other limb, there is extension reflex, which is extensors, they are stimulated of the other limb. Why this extensor response is there in the other limb? Because it helps in maintaining your body weight and posture. If during this withdrawal reflex, if only it helps in balancing your body posture. If there is flexion of the limb, you won't be able to manage your balance. And that is why the extension of the other limb takes place, which helps in balancing your body weight. If suppose there is some painful stimulus is applied on your hand, what will happen? You immediately lift your hand and you go back. There is extension of the other limb, and there will be extension of the other limb. The whole of this, your body, multiple changes, they occur in your body position. It is the flexion in the limb affected and the extension of the other limbs. The extension helps in maintaining the body posture. This is possible because of this multisynaptic, polysynaptic connections of these. Because of the withdrawal reflex, it's a polysynaptic. This explains because of the multiple mass reflex type of action is there and mass reflex is there in withdrawal reflex, and that is why it's a polysynaptic reflex activity. There are four things which happen. That is, first, the painful stimulus activates the nociceptor. Then primary sensory neuron, it enters the spinal cord and it diverges. That is, this is the divergence of the afferent. That is, it is synapsing with the multiple interneurons. Then one collateral activates the ascending pathway for sensation of the pain, and the postural adjustments, there is shift in the center of gravity. Then it is going upward, one limb of the afferent is going upward for pain sensation, and with this pain sensation, the other limbs, they are multiple interneurons, they are getting. This withdrawal reflex, it pulls the full foot away from the painful stimulus, and crossed extensor reflex. This because the extension of the other limb, that is this pathway, this is also known as the crossed extensor cross extensor reflex, which is initiated along with this. This is the flexor reflex and this is crossed extensor reflex. So there are two reflex activity which are involved with the withdrawal reflex. One is flexion of the affected limb. There is flexor reflex and the extensor reflex, that is the crossed extensor reflex of the other limb, which help in maintaining the body posture, body balance, and which supports the body weight and helps in maintaining the posture, your posture, and help in shifting away from the painful stimulus. Next. So these are the details about stretch reflex, inverse stretch reflex, and withdrawal reflex. Now we come to the properties of reflexes. First property of reflex is adequate stimulus. That is, if the stimulus is not adequate, the reflex will never be elicited. For example, scratch reflex in case of animals. In animals, you must have seen this sometime. If ant or any insect, it crawls on the body of the animal, what happens? It starts scratching his body, and this scratch is continuous stretching is there. This happens. That is, but if a fly, it hops from one position to second position to third position. Because of this hopping, stimulus is not that strong, so scratching is not there. With the hopping of the fly. But insect is crawling on the body, that initiates it makes the stimulus so much strong, make the stimulus adequate for stretching, and therefore the scratching takes place. So the stimulus, for eliciting any reflex, the stimulus should be adequate one, then only reflex is elicited, otherwise it will not be elicited. That is, the number of there should be adequate number of motor neurons, they should be recruited. Then second is the final common path. That is, alpha motor neuron, it forms the final common path, and this final common path, that is, it receives the alpha motor neuron, it receives multiple inputs via it receives the input from excitatory input, inhibitory input in the form of EPSP and IPSP. Then it also receives input in the form of from the descending tracts. And all these, and the final path for elicitation of any reflex, these alpha motor neurons. So these excitatory and inhibitory inputs, they are balanced, and then a final output is generated in the alpha motor neuron, and that is why it is the final, there is always one final path associated with the reflex activity. Now, next is the convergence and divergence. From in the withdrawal reflex, we have seen that there is a divergence of the afferent output. That is the single afferent output. It is going to multiple other interneurons. But in some time, it is also there to make the stimulus output strong. There are multiple afferent neurons. They converge on single efferent neuron, and that is known as convergence. Now, facilitation and inhibition. The facilitation and inhibition is also brought about. It occurs in the reflex activity. That is, multiple neurons, they are facilitated. Once there is with one stimulus, the multiple neurons, some of the neurons, they will strike, but the other neurons, they will be stimulated. Their EPSP will be generated in them, but they are not, action potential is not generated. So number of neurons, they are, so another time when the stimulus is applied, they also start firing, and the increased effect is brought about, that is facilitation. And inhibition, it occurs in case of alpha motor neuron, they also synapse with the Renshaw cells. The Renshaw cells, they are the inhibitory neurons. These inhibitory neurons, these Renshaw cells are, again, they synapse with the alpha motor neurons. They go back and they synapse with the same alpha motor neuron. Thereby, they are checking the output of the alpha motor neuron. That is inhibition. This inhibitory output of Renshaw cells, it checks the output of the alpha motor neuron. The another property is summation. The summation can be spatial or temporal. Spatial means multiple afferent neurons, they are stimulated at one place, and that is a spatial summation. And temporal is multiple stimuli is applied to a single afferent neuron. Single afferent neuron is multiple times stimulated. Both type of summations, they occur in case of reflex activity. Now, fractionation and occlusion. This fractionation and occlusion, it also, we can be demonstrated with the reflex activity. That is again another property of the reflex activity, that is the fractionation and occlusion. This fractionation means the effect, if a strong stimulus is applied, always what happens, it has been seen that once a very strong stimulus, but the effect generated, it is not that strong. That means there occurs the division. It is not that one stimulus applied, it will go to a single motor neuron. It goes to multiple motor neurons. That is the fractionation. And occlusion is if the individual afferent neuron, they are stimulated, motor neuron, they are stimulated, the effect generated will be more if they are stimulated simultaneously. That is some of the effects of stimulation of motor neurons, it is depleted if a stimulus is decreased. That is known as occlusion. That is, if the multiple neurons, they are stimulated simultaneously, but the effect generated is not the desired one. That shows that there is some of the impulses, they are not conducted proper. They are not properly conducted, and they are inhibited. And next property is habituation and sensitization. Habituation means after some time, once the stimulus is applied continuously, a habituation is there. That is, after some time, the response, we do not get any response, and that is known as habituation. And sensitization, with the withdrawal reflex or with the stimulation of the nociceptors, there will always be, they are sensitization. With the stimulation of the nociceptors, they always remain responsive. There is no habituation develops to that, and that is also another quality of withdrawal reflex. Is always a sensitization. Sensitization is a quality of a withdrawal reflex. Next is the local sign. Local sign is a quality of which is frequently observed in case of withdrawal reflex. What is this local sign? The local sign is whenever a stimulus is applied. Suppose if the stimulus is applied in my hand from the medial side, what will happen if a pinprick is there from the medial side? What will happen? There will be flexion as well as abduction. That is, and if the stimulus is applied from the lateral side, what will happen? There will be adduction as well as the flexion. That is, the site of the stimulus also play a role in elicitation of the reflex. If it is from the medial side, it will cause abduction as well as the flexion, whereas it will cause, if the stimulus is applied from the lateral side, it will cause adduction as well as the flexion. So the site of application of the stimulus is also important in case of polysynaptic reflexes, that is withdrawal reflex. Now, after discharge. After discharge is another property. Next slide. After discharge is another property. We frequently observe this after discharge in case of polysynaptic reflexes, that is in withdrawal reflex. That is, what happens, because the afferent output, it is going to multiple neurons, multiple efferent neurons, motor neurons, and some of the reverberation is there. Reverberating cycles, they are also formed, and that leads to, there will be increased discharge. It is not that there will be a application of a stimulus and the spontaneous action, but that posture. If in case of a withdrawal reflex, what happens? Whenever if you find any painful stimuli, you remove your foot or you remove your body from that painful stimulus, but you remain in that posture for some duration. This maintenance of posture for some duration, it is the property of after discharge. The after discharge, the continuous, the long-term motor neurons, they are stimulated in this pathway by this polysynaptic pathway. Some of the long-acting neurotransmitters are released, and these long-acting neurotransmitters, they are responsible for after discharge and maintenance of that posture, static posture, for some more duration. That is the after discharge. That is known as the after discharge. In case of after discharge is usually we observe in case of polysynaptic reflexes. And polysynaptic reflexes, as I had told you, this mechanism for after discharge is the polysynaptic reflexes and reverberating cycle plus long-acting neurotransmitter release. This, because of the release of long-acting neurotransmitter, that is the neurotransmitter, it remains in the synaptic cleft for a longer duration, so it brings about the action of this neurotransmitter. It percolates for some time, and that is why you must have observed whenever there is a withdrawal of a limb and you maintain after withdrawing, that posture is maintained for some of the seconds, and this is due to the after discharge property of the reflex activity. This is all about the reflex action. Reflexes. Thank you very much.